shining a spotlight on a dispute between the South African government and trade unions over minimum wage. A solar-powered lighting system at a South Sudan hospital is expected to improve services and security. And mixed martial arts fighting gains a foothold in Togo. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin in East Africa, where Kenyan Red Cross officials say at least 100 people have been killed in heavy rains and devastating landslides since April. Red Cross Secretary General Abbas Goulet says an estimated 20,000 people have been displaced since the beginning of April, creating a humanitarian disaster that needs emergency funding. Flooding has blocked major roads across central, northern and the coastal areas of Kenya. 8 people were killed last Friday when mudslides destroyed their homes as they slept in the hilly central region of Murang'a. The military and police deployed helicopters to rescue flood victims in the Tana River Delta wetlands after the country's longest river burst its banks and dumping water into villages and farms. Close to 70% of the area is flooded. The Red Cross says outbreaks of waterborne diseases are now a major concern. U.S. President Donald Trump called for a closer trade and security relationship with Nigeria as he met that country's President Muhammadu Buhari at the White House on Monday. Buhari is the first sub-Saharan African leader that Trump has hosted. VOA's Bill Gallo has more.
President Donald Trump attempting to reset his relationship with Africa as he hosted Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari.
We have many things that we do together, as you know, probably especially on terrorism.
Both leaders downplaying the controversy over Trump's reported vulgar comments about African countries in January, with Buhari saying he wasn't interested in discussing it.
I'm not sure about, the validity or whether that allegation against the president was true or not. So the best thing for me is to keep quiet.
But although the two leaders glossed over the controversy, some think it could have long-term impacts.
I think Nigerians will not forget those sorts of comments, but I think they're also eager to move forward and to get back to some kind of relationship with the United States, which is mutually beneficial and mutually productive.
On Monday, Buhari and Trump focused on mutual interests, such as weapons sales.
We love helicopters. He likes them more than I do.
Trump referring to his decision to approve a $600 million military sales deal to Nigeria. Nigeria uses the equipment to fight Boko Haram, an extremist group that has waged an almost decade-long insurgency. Trump condemned Boko Haram as a ruthless jihadist group and vowed to work together to defeat it. Bill Gallo, VOA News, the White House.
After more than a month of travel by foot, bus and train, a caravan of Central American migrants has arrived at Tijuana, U.S.-Mexico port of entry in a bid to receive asylum. Late Monday, according to a migrant group organizer, a small group of 8 migrants were allowed to enter the United States for processing. As VOA's Ramon Taylor reports, the rest of the asylum seekers remain at the border awaiting their immigration fate.
Overwhelmed with emotion, more than 150 migrants have nearly completed their journey north from Central America, where many say they fled a life defined by violence.
I am happy for the opportunity and doubtful because of what could happen.
U.S. law permits individuals to seek asylum, which is granted if they can demonstrate a credible fear of persecution. But upon arrival at the U.S.-Mexico border, the migrants' long wait continued. Immigration officials said the port of entry, which has capacity for about 300 people, was already full.
They're just saying they'll handle the people when they have the capacity. But how can it be that the American government, the most powerful government of the world, and one of the richest, does not have the capacity to process 200 refugees, people who are very vulnerable? I don't believe it.
Many migrants camped overnight with their belongings outside the gate. On Monday, President Trump said he was monitoring the caravan. He also renewed his criticism of a policy known as catch and release, which allows migrants to be released from prolonged detention into the U.S. while the statuses of their asylum cases are pending.
If they touch our property, if they touch our country, essentially you catch them and you release them into our country. That's not acceptable to anybody. So we need a change in the law.
People who seek asylum at the U.S. ports of entry are abiding by the law. The U.S. Border Patrol, which monitors the 3,000-kilometer U.S.-Mexico border between the ports of entry, asks would-be crossers to avoid entering elsewhere.
We understand that they have a dream, they have a need. There are laws in this country. We need to abide by them. We expect everybody that's coming to our country to abide by those laws, and we're here to enforce them.
Among the caravan of U.S. asylum hopefuls, roughly half are minors accompanied by their parents, and not all think they will be granted asylum. Luis Pavon decided to stay behind in Mexico as his wife and daughter began the asylum process.
I wouldn't be able to see my daughter again, but at least here, on this side of the border, I have the possibility of one day seeing her again.
Ramon Taylor, VOA News.
Well, now for the latest on the migrant situation, VOA's Arturo Martinez joins me live via Skype from San Isidro, California, near the U.S.-Mexico border. Hello, Arturo. First, tell us what it is that those few who've been allowed to cross over to the U.S., what they had to prove, what case they had to make in order to be allowed in.
Hi, how are you? Well, it's been 3 women, 3 mothers, 4 children, and 1 adult female over 18 years old that have been accepted into this facility, the port of entry of San Isidro, which we see behind me. And what they have to claim now is that they're fleeing from a credible fear of violence, of being criminalized. And that's what I've been speaking to some of them, you know, when they were coming around here on the other side of this border, where's Tijuana, now on the U.S. side, and they were saying, like, some of them were had their family members killed and were even threatened. So that's the claim they have to explain to the U.S. authorities now, and they will study each case by case and realize if that's credible or not credible. And after that, which could take even days or months, they will let them in or deport them back.
Now, I mean, this is quite a challenge because it means that pretty much they have to have some kind of evidence. But we know that in some cases, people don't have any documentation, probably. So it depends on the discretion of the officers in interviewing them, or what else is required?
Pretty much depends on what you say, because most of them come with nothing on, just a backpack with 2 pairs of trousers and some water. And they don't have any documents, as you say, as well. So it's pretty much, how they explain their story and if it's credible. And, some of them do bring some papers from the government in their home countries, which could be Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, or El Salvador. And, they can claim they're hiding or fleeing from the pandillas, from the maras over there, but most of them don't. So it's a difficult situation for them, and it's still a long process after crossing the whole country of Mexico, most of them in that train known as La Bestia, which is very dangerous. Also, many of the migrants whom I was speaking to, they were telling me they were being robbed in that train. They were being stopped in the middle of the night and left in the middle of the field with nothing on their shoes. So it's been a long journey, and they're willing to stay here and try their best to access the United States.
Now, the common narrative is that most of those crossing over through the Mexico border are actually coming in illegally, perhaps through certain routes or even jumping over the fences. But this one's actually trying to get in legally. They want to come in a way that is acceptable, right?
Yes, it was around 350 migrants from that initial caravan that started with over 1,000 1 month ago, and now it's like 350 that arrived to Tijuana around 1 week ago. And from those 350, around 150, after speaking with some lawyers who were expecting and who were explaining them their possibilities, decided they had the chance to claim for political asylum. So it's they're following the legal procedure to enter the United States, those 150 migrants.
All right. So you get a sense the area, the entry point is overwhelmed at this moment?
Well, that's what some people were claiming.
We're gonna end it there. We're gonna stop it there, Arturo, because of time. Thank you very much for your excellent reporting from there. That's Arturo Martinez reporting live via Skype from near the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, the U.S. State Department is denouncing recent political violence, intimidation and harassment in Burundi ahead of the country's May 17th referendum to amend its constitution. In a statement released on Tuesday, the U.S. also expressed concerns that the vote seeking to extend the president's term in office could hurt its democratic institutions. The U.S. is calling on the government to respect Burundi's international legal obligations regarding the rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association. Burundian courts on Monday sentenced an official in the country's ruling party to 3 years in jail for pushing to have opponents of the referendum thrown into a lake. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, a solar power alternative lights up a South Sudan hospital. Stay with us. Well, it's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lina Mudur with more on a genetic link of depression. Lina.
That's right. International scientists have identified 44 genetic variants that can increase the risk of developing major depression and found that all humans carry at least some of them. Scientists also found that the genetic basis for depression is shared with other psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, and that a number of the variants are linked to the targets of antidepressant drugs. The study was a global effort with data covering more than 135,000 patients with major depression and around 344,000 controls as comparisons. Medical experts say major depression affects around 14% of people worldwide and is the biggest contributor to long-term disability in the general population. Now, a solar power project is helping doctors and nurses at the teaching hospital in Juba, South Sudan, assist patients despite often power outages. Take a look. The staff here at the teaching hospital in Juba, South Sudan, is struggling to treat patients due to constant power cuts. The power outages are forcing workers to improvise their care to the patients, sometimes in very risky ways.
We were using our mobile phone light. Sometimes it falls on the patient. Even to insert the canal for the drip, we used our mobile phone light. These were the most difficult moments for us, but now we thank God that we have light. We can work. Sometimes we have cases of those who wanted to deliver babies, but with darkness, it becomes difficult for a nurse to help. So giving birth without light sometimes results in deaths. But since there are people who think about us South Sudanese, may God bless them.
5 years of fighting has left the infrastructure of the world's youngest nation in shambles. The days of blackouts are now over, thanks to a solar power project funded by the United Nations Peacekeeping Mission in South Sudan, UNMISS. Doctors and nurses at the hospital can now assist those in need despite the frequent power outages.
Sometimes we need investigations to be conducted across different wards. So the movement of our patients and doctors and nurses who are working in the hospital was in jeopardy because it's dark, sometimes they're afraid, and then this one impacts the treatment of our patients. Now, with the installation of these solar panels in Juba Teaching Hospital, the path is widened, people could walk at night, nobody fears, and our doctors are actually happy to come all across from the emergency department into the wards to see in case we have patients who develop problems.
A total of 38 solar panels Plus, batteries and metal poles have been erected in a bid to provide a safe working environment 24 hours a day. The UN mission in South Sudan intends to undertake other projects to support the hospital in the future.
You cannot have development without a healthy nation. A healthy nation is a nation that is promising, its citizens for a better future. So by providing this support, at the Juba Teaching Hospital here, is further enhancing, providing security and protection of the civilians that are coming here.
The UN mission says the next step for the hospital is to improve hygiene, sanitation, and mortuary services. And not too far in Kenya, scientists believe they have discovered a new way to combat malaria. As VOA's Faith Lapidus reports, a common medication already used to treat a host of illnesses makes people's blood poisonous to the Anopheles mosquito, which spreads the deadly disease.
Malaria remains one of the world's most stubborn health challenges, infecting more than 200 million people every year and killing about 500,000, most of them children in Africa. The disease spreads when a mosquito bites someone already infected, sucks up blood and parasites, and then bites another person. Scientists working with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and the Kenya Medical Research Institute believe they may have found a new way to prevent the spread of malaria in small communities. It's a drug called ivermectin.
For a long time, it's been used as a prescription medicine for treatment of intestinal worms, mostly in children and even in adults. And in parts of West Africa, it's actually been used for control of river blindness disease, what we call onchocerciasis. So what we found out was that the moment somebody takes ivermectin, if a mosquito bites them, they actually become poisonous to that mosquito.
To be effective, researchers say the medicine needs to be distributed in a controlled and calculated way throughout a community.
So ideally, ivermectin would be given in what's called a mass drug administration. So if we select a community, a village, for example, or a county, for example, everybody in that county receives the drug at the same time. So it means that for that period of time, for the 28 days that ivermectin is effective, you'd have a continuous killing effect. So everybody that a mosquito comes and bites at that time would be that mosquito would actually die.
That would be good news for the millions of people infected with malaria every year. I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Mudu. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll be sure to watch Linor Mudu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Mixed martial arts gets a boost on the continent. We'll be right back.
Thank you very much. I ask you all to... But I just want you to know that this matter is political.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Now, Togo's mixed martial arts champion Bonsu Baba Njombe took the title of Best MMA Fighter for West Africa in the under 75 kilograms category after defeating Benin's Terror Rashidi. A Lomé Fight Night was the first MMA event to take place in Togo, bringing together around 20 fighters from 7 countries, including France, Nigeria, Germany, Ghana, and Ivory Coast. It's a fusion of fight styles that combines the stunning strikes of boxing and Muay Thai, the sleek submission of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the devastating power of wrestling. And now we want to go over to South Africa to look at what are the challenges that the new president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is facing as labor unions go on the streets to protest poor working conditions and low pay. And to talk to us about that is Ralph Mateka. He's a political analyst at the University of the Western Cape and joins me now from Cape Town. Ralph, good evening.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers.
Yes, now we know today is Labor Day across Africa. Share with us, we know that Cyril Ramaphosa was a man who was a unionist turned tycoon and now president. What would you say, on whose side is he now on the labor issue?
Well, quite interestingly is that there has been a build-up to this Labor Day. About 6 days ago, trade union federation, the new trade union federation, went on to challenge the minimum wage, which was negotiated by Cyril Ramaphosa. They called it a slave wage. And today what we have seen is the very same trade union federation, which is a challenge to COSATU, which was partially formed by Cyril Ramaphosa. So the new trade unions, they are saying that Mr. Ramaphosa is the enemy of the workers, and they're actually saying that he's supposed to understand the plight of the workers much better than anyone else. And one of the key figures here, Jay Naidoo, a very prominent activist in South Africa, has been saying that he wants to see the Cyril Ramaphosa that he knows from the 1980s, Cyril Ramaphosa who stood on the side of the workers. So I do think that as we speak now, there is a concern that Mr. Ramaphosa is on the side of corporates. He's no longer on the side of the workers as they know him.
But we know that Cyril Ramaphosa got the endorsement and support of the Trade Union Federation, COSATU, which is a member of the tripartite, that is the alliance that rules South Africa. Is he still enjoying the support of COSATU itself and not the other trade unions?
Indeed, he's enjoying a good support from COSATU and also South African Communist Party, another member of the tripartite alliance, together with COSATU and the ANC. They support Mr. Ramaphosa. But the challenge here is that it appears that COSATU, it's no longer seen as the only voice of the workers, or at least the only voice of progressive workers in South Africa. The new trade union, SAFTU, is challenging the legitimacy of COSATU as a representative of the workers. So Mr. Ramaphosa is counting on COSATU, and COSATU actually has been bleeding membership. They are now relying heavily on public sector affiliate unions, such as the Democratic Teachers Union, the Health Workers Union. So one of former COSATU Secretary General, Mr. Gweta Mantashe, actually referred to COSATU as a yellow trade union, saying that it no longer represents the workers. They must be very careful. Now they are being led, they are being dominated by professional affiliates. So COSATU is actually under siege here because they are being seen as just dancing to the tune of political leaders within the ANC. The new trade union being led by the former COSATU Secretary General, who has been expelled a few years ago, Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi, seems to be making inroads as a representative of the workers now.
From where you stand, do you see Cyril Ramaphosa as a turncoat? Is he in a kind of finding himself in a very difficult position, or what is he now?
The difficulty is that he understands the plight of the workers. So I think that someone like that, expectations are high, where workers are saying that you know exactly where we come from. You formed the biggest federation in the country. We don't expect the policies that we are hearing from you. The proposal to amend the labor laws, to actually relax the labor laws, to make it very easy for companies to fire people. Those are some of the issues that the workers are standing against him on. And also, the controversial increase of VAT by 1% is one of the issues that got the workers uniting, saying that Mr. Ramaphosa seems to be betting for the other team. He seems to be with the corporate now. So he will have to manage the anxiety among the workers. He's a good negotiator. We will see if he will be able to get the workers to settle and work with him.
We remember the tragedy of the Marikana, and looking back, you know, we try to, sometimes you look at the comparison between the negotiating power of Cyril Ramaphosa and now former President Jacob Zuma, who seems to have connected more with the common people, the workers at that level.
Mr. Zuma has had a great relationship with the workers, despite allegations of corruption that actually his administration did not serve ordinary people, proliferation of corruption. But Mr. Ramaphosa, having been in the mining sector the last few years, and you correctly mentioned the question of Marikana, which I think is being seen as a modern-day tragedy in South Africa. And other political parties, such as the Economic Freedom Front, is actually beating the Marikana drum, saying that Mr. Ramaphosa cannot be fully trusted. So the Marikana burden still remains, and I think that if there is any attempt, or if there are any possibility that Mr. Ramaphosa can strike a rapport with the workers, he will have to go back to Marikana. He will have to be seen at least doing something for those impoverished mining communities in Marikana. And I think that the minimum wage that he has proposed, some are saying that it is just not the best way to start that kind of a conversation.
But let's face it, overall, South Africa's economy has been suffering for the last several months. Is he also perhaps in a situation where he has to balance between meeting the needs of the workers, but also attracting the investment and encouraging the businesses so that they can feel that it's profitable to do business in South Africa?
That is the dilemma he's facing, because I believe that his attempt to increase VAT, actually to spread the problem of an ailing fiscus across the society by extracting money and strengthening the fiscus by involving just about everyone else. He did not increase corporate tax. And I think that he's trying by all means to say to the finance community that South Africa is stable, they can come and work with him. But the challenge is on the ground. The workers are not buying it. So he's supposed to balance the interest of the workers with that of the business community, so as to restore the confidence of the business community in South Africa, saying that South Africa is ready to do business. But when you look at the protest, you look at the strike, the bus strike that is currently underway, it sends a very different message out there to the business community. It says that Mr. Ramaphosa, he's the president of South Africa, no doubt, but it seems he's not enjoying greater confidence on the side of the workers. Workers seem not to be willing to moderate on the wage demand. And I think he will have to make a case that they need to moderate so that they can grow the economy. Yeah. That is a difficult case to make at this point.
Indeed, what a challenge for Mr. Ramaphosa. Well, thank you very much, Raf, for your insights into the situation. Thank you. That's Raf Mateka, who is a political analyst at the South Africa's University of the Western Cape. And that's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This expression sounds like a violent way of eating, but it's actually not always about eating.
Here is your Russian book, Anna. Thanks for letting me borrow it.
Oh, are you done with level 1 already?
Yeah, I finished last week, and I've already finished level 2.
Wow, you are really sinking your teeth into learning Russian.
Well,